Now,
Fine girls from France for me.
Here's a question. Are you a registered organ donor? Well, if you are not, this next film might make you change your mind. Here's Wendy Robbins.
33-year-old John Carter from Sunderland was a happily married family man. In 2008, he was diagnosed with a brain tumour. He died just 4 weeks later.
He was a good son. He couldn't be any better. Just so happy and always had a smile on his face. To lose a child is the worst thing that could ever happen to any parent. I defy anybody to say anything different to that.
The family agreed to donate John's organs for transplant. 8 miles away in North Shields was Scott Rutherford, who'd been born with a rare heart defect.
I couldn't go out to play. I used to kind of just sit in my bedroom and look out the window and see people riding bikes and playing football. Any form of physical exercise, I would have put myself at risk of a major heart attack.
By the time he was 15, Scott had endured hundreds of operations and procedures. Without a heart transplant, he would die.
My health got worse and worse, but I mean, I never really slept because I was terrified to go to sleep because I thought I'm not going to wake up in the morning, and I thought I was going to die every day.
In September 2008, Scott was told a heart had become available. The transplant was a success.
I felt alive. I felt like I was dead beforehand. I was just kind of floating about with a weak heartbeat and no form of life at all. But I pinched a stethoscope from one of the doctors, and I used to sleep in the night time and I'd put it in my ears and I would hold the stethoscope to my chest and I'd just lie there for hours and just listen and all for hours upon hours upon hours.
5 years later, Scott was asked to speak at a service for organ donors at St George's Church in Newcastle.
I got up and I told my story of like what my life was like prior transplant and then what it was like now.
Listening at the back of the church was John's mum, Frida. She knew very little about the person who had received her son's heart, except he was called Scott and he was doing well. Donor families are only given limited information about organ recipients to protect anonymity.
We sat down and I just started flipping through my order of service. And on the second page, it had Scott Rutherford, and that name just jumped off the page towards me, you know, and I thought, that's him, that's him. Scott got up and he sang, and he sang, and then he said, he sang Scott of the family of John.
I thanked the family of John, and then I tapped my chest and I said I would be eternally thankful and forever grateful. And
that was it. Everything slotted into place. I couldn't get over to anyone that was him, you know, and I needed to touch him, I needed to feel him, I needed to give him a cuddle.
Frida asked a transplant coordinator if she could meet Scott there and then. The coordinator agreed to approach him.
She sat me down and she said, I don't know how to tell you this. Your donor's mum, dad and auntie and uncle are sat at the back of the church. And I could see she was speaking to us, but I just couldn't respond because I was just in that much shock.
The staff from the transplant service had never known a donor family and recipient to meet by chance like this. Scott prepared himself to meet Frida.
It was just so unreal.
And I just kind of opened my arms and Frida just fell straight into them.
And then I said, can I feel your heartbeat? And he got my hand. And he opened his jacket and he put his hand on his heart. That's all I ever wanted. My wish came true that day. My son's heart was beating in Scott's body. The love my son had, Scott had that love, you know.
I feel this responsibility to myself because I was given this second chance of life, so now I feel like I need to live life and grab every possible opportunity that I can and do it to the fullest.
If I could have picked anybody in the whole world to have my son's heart, I would have picked Scott.
Well, and joining us are Frida with daughter Julie and Scott with mum Wendy. Frida, Scott, thank you so much for allowing us to hear this story. And I mean, you told it in such an incredible way. I'm sure it will have touched so many people out there. But you have this remarkable connection. I mean, Frida, how close have you become?
Oh, very, very, very close. We have a bond that nobody could break now. He calls us his heart mum and dad and his heart sister. And we have. I love him. I love him. I love them all. I love his brothers. I love his mum. We go out for meals together.
Yeah.
We spend social times together. And he hasn't got a sister, but he's got a sister now.
In Julie.
Yeah. And they often go out for meals together, and you know, it's just an extended family.
Yeah.
You know, through it, how it happened is just a miracle. It's a miracle.
Well, that's the extraordinary thing. You were in that church, and Scott, that's the first time that you'd gone there, and it was a last-minute thing, wasn't it? You turning up at that church.
No, it was just I got a phone call from a transplant coordinator, it was Lynn, and she asked to sing and speak at this church service, which she does like to do my thing, because I often speak at transplant conferences and things like such. So I agreed to go along, and I got up and told my story of what my life was like prior transplant, and how having the transplant then changed my life, and how I managed to go on to study and do what I wanted to do. And
and how is your heart now, and how are you feeling? Do you still feel the need to listen to it?
Oh yeah. I'm always listening to it. For comfort, I put my hand on my chest like on an evening, and just and feel it, because when I first had the transplant, the heartbeat would keep me awake. And I'd have to kind of get used to a strong heartbeat in a sense. And I took a stethoscope off one of the doctors, and I'd sit for hours with the stethoscope in my ear and holding it to my chest, and I couldn't believe that I'd went from being blue and feeling like, well, in a sense dead, to then being warm, and my face was warm, and I had a strong heartbeat, and my fingertips were pink, and it was just surreal.
And Wendy, obviously there's reasons for anonymity that we heard in the film there, but did you ever imagine that it would turn out like this if you did get to meet?
No, definitely not. Just amazing, amazing people. Absolutely fantastic.
And you've got, I mean, Wendy, Frida, you said that you all go away on holidays and what have you together, and there's some lovely footage of the first time that you met over in was it Canada, wasn't it?
Points to the Rocky Mountain here, yes. The first time I met Scott was in Vancouver.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
What an experience. I mean, I couldn't be any more thankful to Rocky Mountaineer, and they worked with a fantastic charity called Transplant Sport. Yeah. And they arranged the whole thing, and it was just, it was the most amazing, breathtaking, but very, very emotional journey either we've ever embarked on, and I think we cried enough tears to actually fill Lake Louise, to be perfectly honest. Because that's all we did.
Well, listen, thank you so much once again for coming along and talking to us. And this way, obviously, of meeting isn't exactly normal. But Alex, you're with two families who did things in a more orthodox fashion, yeah?
Yeah, that's right. We've got donor family, Pauline and Claire, and we've got recipient Abigail, her mum Sarah here, and Lynn, transplant coordinator. So, as we know, each family is given anonymity to begin with. But if they do choose to meet up, then Lynn, how do you help them make that happen?
Well, I think it's so important that they have an opportunity to say thank you for the most precious gift, the gift of life. So we facilitate, we'll let them write a card or a letter, and we pass it on to the donor coordinators, who will pass it on to the donor family.
Right, okay.
And normally that's where it stops.
Okay. And Abigail, you received Pauline's late son's liver, didn't you? And you wrote to Pauline and the family. Did you think really hard about doing that? And what was the main reason? Obviously to say thank you, but why did you want to get in touch so badly?
I always wanted to say thank you from the start. Like, if it didn't get anything back from them, that was fine, but at least they knew that I was okay and they had done such a great thing.
Yeah, and you were grateful.
Yeah.
Yes,
yeah, definitely.
And Claire, we heard there Frida talking about how close the families have become, and it's the same, isn't it, in your case?
It is, yes. So we consider Abby and her family to be part of our extended family, and it made perfect sense for me to ask Abby to be my bridesmaid at my wedding in May 2013. So me and my husband were so honoured to have Abby there as part of our special day, and it just made the day absolutely perfect.
Yes, I'm sure it did. And Sarah, for any other families who've been through something similar and considering getting in touch with the donor family, what would you say to them?
It's not something for everybody, but for us and our family, we thought it was something that we wanted to do. We wanted to say thank you, Pauline and Claire, and I hope we've given you some peace of mind. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
It's incredible, incredibly emotional over here. Pauline, you were right there. It's a difficult,
yes,
it's a difficult film for you to watch.
It's so heart-touching, isn't it? You know, to say that. And for Abigail to write to me to say she was so sorry about the loss of my son, but she could not thank us enough for the gift of life and a chance of a second, you know, she had a second chance.
Yeah.
And this is what organ donation's all about.
Yes.
It's giving somebody a precious gift of life. And please sign that register, because there are so many people that need organs and we don't want to think about it. But if your child needed an organ, or somebody you knew, it just makes sense to give them a second chance.
Thank you so much to all the families who've come in to talk about it. Thank you so much. And as you said, 3 people a day die waiting for organs, don't they?
And tell your family now what your wishes would be.
Yes, exactly. If you'd like more information on organ donation, there's links on our website, bbc.co.uk/The One Show. Now, Matt, I saw him scuttle past and he's outside somewhere. Matt, what are you up to?